Revelation said, he who has an ear, let him hear. And so all of you have ears today, right? That you'll hear the message that God has for us today. The year was 1939. The place was London, England, and German bombers were raining down destruction over that great city. And of all people, there was a British graphic designer who had an idea that he believed would capture the imagination of the people, would raise the morale of the people, and he could use his small skill to contribute to the war effort. So he designed a poster that's really ubiquitous today, but then it was a little known poster, and the poster was this. Maybe you've seen it before. Put that poster up there, Lydia. Keep calm and carry on. How many have seen that before? Absolutely, we all have now. So in 1939, he had this idea for this little catchphrase, keep calm and carry on, would really raise the morale of the people. He was so excited about this, he thought it would really work. So he went to the governmental printing office, and he said, I have an idea that's going to be, I think, really great. And he had already gone to the printing office and printed out 2.5 million copies of this poster. So he took it to his superior, showed it to his superior, so excited about it. And his superior said, that's never going to work. It's never going to work. You know, a simple people don't want, in times like this, they don't want some simple little catchphrase, something that's almost like patronizing, right? People don't want that. So he said no, and he said, not only did he say no, he said, we're going to destroy all of them. So they did. So they destroyed 2.5 million copies of this poster, or so they thought. Late in the year 2000, in a bookstore in downtown London, the bookstore owner and his wife were down in their basement looking through things, and they found a leftover, just one, keep calm and carry on poster. Then, after 9/11 happened, they thought it might be a good idea to frame that poster, and they posted it behind their register, and the rest is history, as they say. This phrase has, after 9/11, this phrase has caught on, and it electrified the entire world. Keep calm. And so much so, it's funny, if you Google just keep calm, you know how Google gives you all these options, right? Google keep calm, and what you'll see are all these other kind of spin-offs of it. And so the next one is kind of for you, for some of you. I know who you are. The next one was this: keep calm and eat chocolate. How many live by that? Keep calm and eat chocolate, right? And then I had to put one up there for my boys. The next one is keep calm and game on. A lot of the young people. But listen, it's become so popular that you'll see just, time and time again, right? And here's the thing. The book of Revelation is the original keep calm and carry on, right? It's the original kind of idea that we need to stick to it. We'll get more to that, right? Especially right now in the time that we're living in. It's amazing to me is how much is renewed this idea of end time prophecy, right? If you watch TV or whatever, you read things, it's crazy out there. People are saying. Now they've always done it, haven't they? Right, throughout all of time, no matter what age it was, you see people saying this is the signs of the end times, right? Because of this, because we see this, and this person's the Antichrist, and the mark of the beast, right? Are you with me? Like all this stuff. And so right now, we need more than ever this message of keep calm and carry on. This whole genre of happenings right now creates, I think, right, this idea that it's the end of the world, it's the end, and so forth. And what we're going to see is in the book of Revelation, you'll see these letters to the church we're going to get into in the next coming weeks. You'll see how their thought of what's happening in the world led to kind of bad behavior, right? If you knew, or risky behavior, right? Have you heard before, we did a whole series one time on 1 month to live. You remember that? If you, not everybody, but some people, if you know that you have a short period of time to live, you think, well, I have a month to live. What does it matter? I'm going to try all this risky behavior, right, that I would never do if I was planning on living for another 50 years, right? Risky behavior that might lead to something kind of drastic. And that's what happens we see in the churches in this book of Revelation, right? So I want you to grab your notes. If you have your notes, if you don't, there's notes out back. If you want someone to get some for your car, if you want to grab some of those notes, if you want some, you can get some. If not, that's fine too. I think this message is relevant for us today because, listen, everybody listen to me. Look here for a minute. This letter, these letters to the church, this whole letter, it was written to a church, right? That their world at that time was turning upside down. Can you relate? Yeah. Right? Their world was turning upside down. Everything that they thought one thing and it was something else, right? Everything up was down, right? Left was right. And the Bible says this. The Bible says in Revelation about this letter, it says this. I know this. By reading this, it says, you will be blessed. In other words, it will benefit you to read this letter. The book of Revelation, as I said, is the original keep calm and carry on. But let me just change it a little bit, right? The book of Revelation is keep confident and carry on. Keep confident. Confident in what? We're going to talk about that. That last song we sang. Keep confident in what? Well, keep confident in God. Keep confident in Jesus. Be energized, be confident, be blessed, because you know that God has a overarching plan for mankind. In your notes, grab your notes. If you have your notes, grab it. I want you to see now. You have to grab it, and then you have to turn it upside down. A little glitch in my printer, right? But we've talked about this last week, and I want you to see in Revelation 1:3. I want to read it to you. Matter of fact, why don't we do this? If you have it there, could you read it out loud with me? Because the whole point it says this. Let's read it together. Blessed is the one who reads aloud the words of this prophecy, and blessed are those who hear it and take to heart what is written in it, because the time is near. Blessed are you, because you will know that God, when you read this, why say you'll be blessed? If you read this out loud and you hear it and you take it to heart. Well, if we read this, what we're going to know are a few things. We're going to know that God does have an overarching plan for mankind, even in the midst of what seems to be chaos. And in this overarching plan, there is a time coming when God's going to restore things to the way they were intended to be. The Bible says there'll be a new heaven and a new earth. And we, right, will have glorified bodies. We'll have bodies. There'll be physicality, like Jesus' body was physical. In the resurrection, Jesus ate. We're not some disembodied spirits floating around on some cloud somewhere, all playing harps and singing, right? That's not what this is. This is about a new heaven and a new earth. And the other thing that it tells us is this, is that you could have confidence and you can know that God knows about you right here, right now. He knows about your current situation. He knows about the problems that you're having. He knows about the struggles that you're having right now. And that He cares for you. And that's what I hope to show us through the letters to these 7 churches, that you will be blessed. Now, there's one problem with the book of Revelation. And that is that this book has these, it's kind of like, I'll call them psychological obstacles to the book of Revelation. How many of you have ever been intimidated by the book of Revelation? Raise your hand. Intimidated by it. Meaning that, you know what, like I'd read it, but man, I tell you what, I just don't get it. Like I don't get what is the horn? 7 horns and seals and mark of the beast and mark of the beast and dragons and seas, and I don't get all this kind of stuff, right? So are those people. And I've been one of those at one time. And then there's this other group of people, and they are, I would say, if these people are intimidated by it, there's another group of people that are like infatuated with it. Have you met these people? Anybody in here a Trekkie? Who's a Trekkie in here? Anybody a Trekkie? No Trekkies? You're kind of a Trekkie? Trekkies, what do? They love Star Trek. They get together and they have conferences and they dress in characters and they come and they talk about Star Trek, right? You said Trekkies. Well, there's a group of people. I want to see her dressed like Spock. Somebody's doing that right now. Can you do that? Anyway. Well, there are a group of people out there you can call Revies, right? They talk about the book of Revelation. They talk about the mark of the beast, and they speculate on who the beast is and what the mark is and all this kind of stuff. And so you have these two extremes. I think both are wrong. We don't need to be intimidated by it. And we don't need to be infatuated with it to the point where we try to figure. Here's what I hope throughout all of our study, all of our reading, everything that we do through the book of Revelation, that you are inspired by it. That you get inspired by this book. You need not be afraid of it. You need not be intimidated by it. You need not to go off the deep end and try to figure out like all this stuff. Here's the thing about, I know we talked about last week, there's all these layers to Revelation. And we're going to discuss some of these layers. We're going to show some of these layers, right? But the big thing I want you to get is that this we'll talk about here in a minute, but these letters were written to real people at a real time that had real meaning to them in their time. So some people think that this letter was written and it's all about a future time to come, even in our future, and something for us to know about. The truth is this. The truth is it was for that time, and the principles that we learn are for each generation, each time, to take to heart, to learn from, to understand that there are certain principles that if we let happen, same things could happen to us. We talked about last week, didn't we? Last week, if you missed last week, there was a lot of background, a lot of stuff about a lot of the Caesars, and we finished with Domitian and a lot of stuff. And listen, I could get back into all of that. It's fascinating. I know everybody said last week, wow, that was so interesting, and there's a lot to talk about. But listen, we need to move on from that, right? But I wanted you to understand that a lot of the language that you see in the book of Revelation isn't just allegorical and we have to try to figure out what it means. It meant something to them in their time, and we'll look at that as well today. So I want us to be inspired by it, and I want to take the mystical and make it meaningful, because really that's what we all need to hear, don't we? Something meaningful for us, for our life right now. We'll take something mystical and we'll make it meaningful. So we're going to look at these real quick. We'll try to get through these. We're going to look at these six defining, clarifying questions, right? Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Let's just kind of go through those kind of quick, okay? I touched on a little bit last week, but the letter was written by John. Now, why is this important? Here's the thing. If I were to bring a letter in here, and it was a 5-page letter that someone had written, and let's say, okay, I speak French, so it was written in French, and I take this letter, it's written in French, and then I take it, and I take a sentence out of it on page 3, halfway down, and I say, this is the French translation, the best I can do of this, and you'd go, okay, well, like, what does that mean? Like, what? It doesn't really mean much to me, right? I need some context. And I said, well, if I told you that maybe my wife wrote it, Michelle wrote it, right? And she was writing this letter to a friend of hers. And in this letter, they were discussing motherhood. Now, is all that information helpful to you? Yeah, it's helpful. It's helpful you to know, oh, okay, I have some context. Now, I know that Michelle wrote it. I kind of know who she is a little bit, or I could learn a little bit about her. I know who she's writing to and why she's doing this writing. So now, in this sentence that I maybe pull out, I could understand a little bit, but to get more context, you need to read before it, you need to read after it. Same thing with the Bible, friends. You need not be intimidated by it. When you approach the Bible, the first thing to learn is who's writing this? Right? And so John's writing this. Who is John? Well, John was one of the original disciples. Now, this is probably in 96 AD, and he's probably an old man by now. If he was maybe a teenager when Jesus called him, which is likely, and we don't know for sure. He might have been a teenager. He might be in his late 80s by this time, right? In 96. It might be, but he's an old man writing this. Not only is he an old man, he's the only disciple that's left. All the others have been killed. They've all been gone. He's a leader of the church, and that's why he's on the island. All right, because of his, a lot of people believe that Domitian, the Caesar at the time, there was this pocket of a group of people who were like these insurrectionists in his empire, right? And Domitian had the proclivity to always go in and just kill people and stuff like that. But he thought, well, maybe I don't want to make martyrs out of them. So what he did is he took their leader. A lot of people believe, a lot of scholars believe, that Domitian is the one who banned John to the Isle of Patmos. So that's where he's at, right? This island is on the Aegean Sea. Picture in your mind's eye the boot of Italy. Right? You got that pictured in the Mediterranean, the boot of Italy. And to the east of it is Greece, right? All the Grecian islands. To the east of that is Turkey, right? So Turkey is what the Bible refers to as Asia Minor. And so that's where these 7 churches were, and that's where this island was. How many would like to go to a Grecian island, right? This isn't that kind of island. Just so you know, it's not that kind of island. When you think of the Isle of Patmos, think of Alcatraz. Think of Alcatraz. Now, in Alcatraz, you ever seen Alcatraz? How many have been to Alcatraz? You've seen it, right? You've seen pictures of it. Or is there a fence around the island of Alcatraz? No fence, right? No fence. Why? Because the sea is the fence. It's the same thing with the Isle of Patmos. The sea is the fence. So it's just a little side note here. When John is talking about a picture of the future and a picture of the new heaven and so forth, he says there's no sea, right? Have you ever read that? You read Revelation? There's no sea. Well, it makes sense that John would say that. What's the sea to him? The sea to him is a barrier, is a fence, is something preventing him from being with those he loved, from being, right? And so he says in the future, there's not going to be any sea. What he's saying is not going to be any barriers. No boundaries, no barriers to anything. You'll be absolutely free, right? And so to know these things, to know a little bit of history behind what you're reading, helps you understand why John's writing the way he is writing. And so he's writing from this Isle of Patmos. Now, he's writing this message to the 7 churches. When is he writing? He was writing it in probably late first century, 96 AD. We talked a little bit about all the Caesars. They had lived through Nero. I'm sure you've heard stories about Nero, right? That Nero was wicked, wicked, wicked. He devised all kind of ways to kill Christians. You know the 2 people he didn't like? He didn't like Christians, and the same with Domitian. Christians and actors. I'm not exactly sure why, but they didn't like sorry, Karen, I know you love acting and everything, but he didn't like those groups of people. Same with Domitian. And they would devise ways, like Domitian would devise ways of killing people. And Nero did the same thing. So he blamed Nero blamed the Christians for the burning down of the city, right? Everybody knows that. But one of the things he did is, listen to this, he would take Christians, he would dip them in oil, and he would put them on stakes in his garden and light them on fire to illuminate his garden. That's what he did. So you have these Christians who had lived through Nero. Now, then there was a period of some years where there were some Caesars that were not so bad. But then during this time, there were these prophecies, right? There were these prophecies, not Christian prophecies. There were these pagan prophecies. We talked some about those last week, remember? There was pagan prophecies that one day that Nero's going to return. Nero's going to return. And he's going to even be more powerful, more dominant than he was before, right? And so then Domitian comes along. Domitian saw himself as kind of a fulfillment of this prophecy as well. And so let's move on. I'm running out of time here. Okay. So what is this about? What is the book of Revelation? Well, so Revelation comes from this Greek word apocalypsis, where we get our word apocalypse, right? Let me ask you a question. When you hear that word apocalypse, what do you think of? End of the world. What else? What movies do you think of? Yeah, zombies. What else? What? Walking Dead, right? Like all these kind of end of the world sort of themes. And that's a problem. It's a problem because Revelation, apocalypse just means this. It means revealing. It means uncovering. How many remember the Wizard of Oz? Remember the Wizard of Oz, right? It means this. Remember when they pulled back the curtain? Pull back the curtain and go, oh, it's the guy's on a microphone back there. That's what's behind all of this. That's what Revelation is, sort of this pulling back of the curtain to see. You know, what we're learning so much now in physics and everything is that the material world that we see is a small part of reality. Isn't that amazing? Have you read stuff like this? It's just a small part of reality. Matter of fact, it's actually, the reality that we think we see and experience is actually obscured, right? Because of all different sorts of things. And there's a larger reality. And so Revelation is this revealing, this uncovering, this unveiling of something more, right? And so why, let's move on to we'll talk about how for a minute, right? How. There's all this symbolic language, and I'm not going to get into this too much because we talked about so much of it last week, right? Horns and lampstands and all this kind of stuff. Like, why is that pertinent, right? So in there he talks about 7 stars. Ever read that? Have you read Revelation? Anybody read it? A few of you have read it? Okay. In there it talks about, matter of fact, let me just read it to you. It's in 3:1. If you have your Bible, you want to open to Revelation 3:1. Revelation is right before the end of the Bible there. You can find it. Revelation 3:1. It says this. It says, these are the words of him who holds the 7 spirits and the God of the 7 stars. So you think, what the heck's that mean, right? What does it mean to them? So Domitian saw himself as God. Okay, you with me? Everybody with me? He saw himself as God. He had a son. So who would his son be? The Son of God. Isn't that right? Okay, Lydia, show that coin. This is a coin that Domitian had. This is his son, right? He's sitting on a world, right? He depicts his son sitting on a world, a globe, right? And what's around there? Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 7 stars. 7 stars. The idea that Domitian had, but with this, is that his son will reign and rule the world, and the 7 stars represented the known universe. That's what it meant. And at the time, everybody knew that, right? Everybody knew that. So when John writes about God and the 7 stars, they knew, he's talking about the universe, that he is the one. Are you with me? That he's the one. I don't think you're with me. No one said anything, but that's okay. That's okay. So and there's all this symbolic language, and we'll get into kind of more of that. And the thing is about this, there's layers of meaning for this. It's not like it was. That's the beauty of it. It's not like it was written for them, just for them, right? It was written to them. It was written to them. It wasn't written to us. It was written to them, but it's also for us. Do you understand that? And that's all of the Bible. The Bible is written to a group of people, for a certain time, but it's also for us today. Listen, we need to learn. I was golfing with Ben, right? And so we need to not look back, right, at what we messed up and look for the future, but we can also learn from the past, right? We can learn from what went wrong in the past, and that's kind of what this is about. Is if you're not careful, if you do the same things, you're going to end up the same way. Talking about, in different prophecies, talking about the destruction of the world. That was referring to AD 70 when Jerusalem was destroyed. But the truth of the matter is that if we don't learn from the past and we live like they lived, the same thing can happen to us. The destruction of what we know, of what we hold dear, right? And if we don't stand up, if we don't be firm, the same future that they had will be the same for us. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Okay? So it's not really a prophecy about the future, but really history is prophecy, is prophetic about our future in every single way, in every single area, right? It could be prophetic about the future. If you don't learn from the future, what do they say? You're destined to what? Repeat it. Repeat it. So in that sense, is it prophetic about our future? 100% is prophetic about the future. Okay, let's go on. Why? Why was it written? Well, I heard a pastor tell a story one time, it's a long time ago, told a story of a place in Maine called Flagstaff, Maine. And I was reminded of this when I was down in York Lake working for a friend. You know, York Lake was flooded, and they flooded a town. Do you know that? Did you know that? It was flooded a town. And when they drained all the water out, you could see like a bridge in there and stuff like that and some foundations. Well, this place in Flagstaff, Maine, listen to this story. They were going to flood the town and just kind of, it was going to be leveled like that, flood it, and we're going to create a big lake and everything. So if you knew your house was going to be flooded and destroyed in 6 months, 9 months, a year, whatever it is, would you worry about painting the outside? No. Would you worry about replacing broken glass? No. You're not going to worry about taking care of it. And so that's exactly what happened to this town in Flagstaff, Maine. No one took care of it, and the place started to deteriorate. Everything was going to, you know what, in a handbasket, right? And guess what? They didn't flood the town. They didn't flood it. And all of their homes were just in disrepair. Someone said this about it. Where there is no faith in the future, right? Talking about this town, where there's no faith in the future, there is no power in the present. Where there is no faith in the future, there's no power in the present. I imagine this. I imagine Jesus, right, during this time, like seeing the churches and seeing the headlines. The town's going to be flooded. And people are starting to have no hope in the future. The churches, his churches that he loved, is having no hope in the future. So Jesus says, I'm going to send new headlines. And that's really what the book of Revelation is about, right? They are letters to the churches. They are letters to us, the whole book, about, I know you're living in a crazy present right now, but there is hope. And I want you to know this, that in the end, I know this is, I'm not big in cliche phrases. As a matter of fact, usually I hate them, right? But the idea of the book of Revelation is kind of this, is listen, in the end, God wins. In the end, love wins. It wins. Yeah, is there trouble now? Yes. Are there struggles now? Yes. I say all the time, I meet with people that have difficulty in relationships and so forth, and I go, here's the thing. Is that what Michelle and I have found in our marriage is that, are there hard times? Yes, there are hard times. And I tell people when they get married, there are going to be hard times. But it depends on how you view those hard times. I know the strength in our relationship has come through hard times, not through the highs, not through the vacations, not through the great things. It's come through the struggles. And then when we come through the struggles together, we're stronger as a couple coming through those things. Don't shy away from those. Matter of fact, press into them. And so that's why I believe that people ask, well, if God can do something about our troubles, why doesn't he? Well, because it's not just about that. He knows that those struggles, those difficulties, and going through those things with his help, with his strength, makes us stronger, makes us better, right? And so that's what we see here in this book. So let me just talk about 3 applications for us today from reading Revelation. The first one is this, in your notes. It reminds us to stay centered. Stay centered. I've been in my next series, I'm going to talk a lot about meditation, right? I'm going to talk about, I've been really practicing now for the past month or so, meditating. And one of the things about meditating is stay centered. Focus on your center and stay centered, right? And so this idea here is stay centered on what? Stay centered on what is true, what is right. Let me just, this is a little snippet of what's going to happen in our next series too. How many have heard of Viktor Frankl? Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp, right? And he wrote this book, Man's Search for Meaning. If you've never read it, you should read it. It's very good. A man, they were doing this, they were out all the prisoners of war were out, they had them kind of marching and wearing like nothing and just terrible situations and everything. And one guy said to Viktor Frankl, he said, I'm so glad that our wives can't see us now. And he took that negative comment and it gave Viktor Frankl hope. And he started to imagine, now listen to me, he started to imagine his wife. He started to think about his wife. He started imagining being with her and the things they loved to do together, and right? And he started to take his mind off his situation. Friends, there is so much research now about our minds and how our minds work, and that's going to be the whole next series, right? And what he did is he took his mind off his current situation, and he focused it, right? He centered it somewhere else. And he said that's what gave him the ability when so many other people couldn't take it anymore and died. It gave him this imagination of being with his wife again, gave him purpose to survive. He said this, I understood. Now, Viktor Frankl was a Jewish man, but his faith wasn't very strong faith at all. Right, he was more kind of agnostic, he says about himself, than anything else. But he said this, I understood how a man with nothing left may still know bliss in the contemplation of his beloved. The contemplation of his beloved. So he said this, I finally understood, for the first time in my life, I finally understood the point of faith. The point of faith. And he said there's a Jewish proverb that he finally got. It says this, the angels are lost in perpetual contemplation of God's infinite glory. Friends, what Jesus is saying in these letters, right, to these churches, listen, stay centered, stay focused on God. And he thought this, if I could just gain strength to withstand a concentration camp, I could see how infinitely more powerful it would be to focus in, to concentrate on, to meditate on the Creator of the universe. And what you're going to see, friends, we get into this, the book of Revelation is filled with this kind of stuff. Matter of fact, listen to this. It says this. John's writing this. He said, on the Lord's day, I was in the Spirit. That means this. It means on the day of worship, right? If it was Sunday, that was fine. It was Sunday. He was in the Spirit. It means he was worshiping. That's all it means. All right? On the Lord's day, right? This day of worship, I was worshiping. I was in the Spirit. I was worshiping. And he said, I heard a loud voice like a trumpet. And then it says this. And among the lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet and with a golden sash around his chest. He's referencing Exodus 38 about the priestly garments, right? And the Messiah was the high priest. And then he said the hair on his head was white like wool. Marty, you'll be glad to know it was about wisdom, right? That's what it meant. The hair of white, it represented wisdom. And his eyes were like blazing fire, which represented brilliant insight. His face was like the sun shining with all his brilliance. Like, what a beautiful picture, isn't it? Isn't that fantastic? This picture that he saw, is the image was meant to capture your imagination, to be lost in the worship of this God, of this God. And so the book of Revelation is about that. It's full of it. It's full of picturing Jesus in this God and Jesus in this language, this majestic, this language that's so big, to get you to focus and concentrate on, listen, I want to center on that. Like, that's what I want to focus on. That's what I want to make the center. And so that's why I want to tell you the book of Revelation, you need not fear it. The book of Revelation is there to inspire us, to give us hope, and to lead us on. And the book of Revelation keeps coming back to this image over and over and over again. It speaks of Jesus being the first and the last. He who is dead has come back to life again. He who is holy, he who is true, he who has the keys of David, who opens doors that no one will shut and closes doors that no one will open. He says this, listen, keep going, keep moving on, keep building. No matter what, Jesus is more powerful, has more insight. Jesus is wiser. He's greater. He has more majesty than any Caesar, than any obstacle that you face, any problem that you have, that you can overcome and you can face it because Jesus is greater. Do you see this? What he's saying is this. Listen, it doesn't matter in your life what you're facing right now. It doesn't matter what doors have been slammed in your face. It's not the end of the story with God. Because he can open any door. Any door that you seem to be closed on you, he can open that door. And he can close doors that no man can close. Listen, he sees every one of us. He sees you today. Just like he did in the book of Revelation. He sees you today in your, I'll use the word the Bible uses, in your sin. To me, I think sin is anything that is that takes away from the shalom. We talked about shalom, right? Last week's the shalom of God, the peace of God. That's sin. And we think of sin as being these horrible things, that all these bad things, right? And we go, well, I don't do those things. I don't say, listen, sin is anything that gets in the way of the peace of God. And he sees us, all of us, in our troubles, in our difficulties, in the things that we have our whole life struggle with. He sees you in that right there, and he still says that I love you and that I call you friend. I heard someone say one time that we spend too much time telling God about our problems. Not that you shouldn't do that. But this goes again to, so many of these points are for the future, for our next series as well. I think we need to spend more time, rather than telling God about our problems, telling our problems, like in our mind, about God, right? Tell your problems about God, the God that you serve, the God that you know, right? And the God of the Bible, and the God of your life, and what he's done in your life, and how you've overcome in your life. I think we need to spend more time doing that. Because listen friends, when we spend all this time talking about our problems and telling God our problems, what we end up doing is, frankly, we tell God our problems far less than we tell other people our problems. Isn't that true? Right? We spend more time talking about our problems to other people. And when you live in that, right? So I told the story before about golf, and I was telling Ben, right, Ben? Right? You need not say, oh, I hope I don't do the same things I did last time. I hope I don't swing bad again. I hope I don't hit I hope I don't do this. And you talk yourself into the same behavior that caused the problems in the last time. That's why people say, well, I come to your church, Jeff, and I never hear you talk about sin. Well, why should I talk about sin? Why should I talk about it? David says in the Bible, my sin is ever before me. Right? I think the same thing with you. You all know when you do wrong, don't you? Yeah. Right? You all know. You all know when you screwed up, even though you try to talk yourself out of it or whatever. You know down deep inside. I don't need to remind you of that. Why remind you of that, right? Why, you come in here and say, listen, I know you guys are doing this, this, and this. Don't do this, this, and this. This is bad. If you do this, this, and this, it's going to be bad for you. Don't do it. You walk out going, I can't do this, this, and this. Can't do this. You walk out and what do? You do this, this, and this. Why? Because that's where your mind is. That's what you're thinking about. Listen, so the Bible, all the stuff that we're learning now in psychology and about the brain and neuroscience, it's all in the Bible. It's just not using that language. They didn't have that language then. We have the language now. We understand it now. We understand how the mind works. We understand what we do. So we don't dwell on the past. The Bible says do what? Think on things that are right and pure and just and holy. Think on these things. Think on these things. Why think on these things? When you're thinking on those things, those are the things that happen. Right? The Bible says that. When you're thinking on the negative things, what happens? Negative things happen. Is this about the prosperity gospel? No, this is about understanding how our mind works. Right? And the Bible is full. All right. 3 or 2, stay consistent. Don't stop. And that's in the letters. Don't stop. Keep pursuing, right? I read this story about a runner. It was down in Georgia, some race in Georgia. Maria, this guy was running, and he was getting to the end, like the last 50 yards, and he stopped running. And he started he's the winner. And guess what? You know what happened, right? Boom, guy flies by him, crosses the line, right? And beats him. And so one of the things he said was, listen, always cross the line. Always cross the line. This idea that, listen, I know it's hard, I know it's, but listen, keep consistent, keep moving on. All these phrases, right? Keep going, step by step, put one foot in front of the other. Those are all from the Bible. They're all from the Bible, right? Keep moving. Keep plodding on. You make a mistake, that's okay, right? Ben, we get a 9 on a hole. Ben, I had a couple 9s or something, right? A 9 on a hole. There's another hole after it. What will you do? What will you do? Will you have the 9 and go, I'm done, I'm done. I felt like that before. I might as well quit now, right? Might as well quit now. But no, there's another hole after it, right? That's in the past. Move on, press on, go forward, be consistent. Last thing is, stay challenged. Stay challenged. You might be surprised by that one, but I think it's really important for us to stay challenged. 7 times in 2 chapters, Jesus says this. And I started with this. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. He who has an ear. So was he writing to the people of the day? Yes. Is he writing to you now? Yes. It's for us. He who has an ear, let him hear. Let him hear what the Spirit says to the self. Why don't the band come on up? We'll get ready to sing that last song again. He's talking to real people at a real time. But he's also talking to us in our real time, right? So he's talking about in history, right? In present and in future history. It's for all of us, for all time. So our prayer should be this: Lord, give me an open heart. This is what I pray for us as we get into studying the 7 churches. Is this: give us an open mind, friends. You have to come with an open mind right off the bat. I talked about that last week, right? You have to come with an open mind. We all have our preconceived ideas of what it is, or what it should be, or what it might be, or what it could be, or what someone else told me. Come with an open mind. Come with a soft heart. Not because of my words, but allow the Spirit to speak to your heart and to give you hope in your troubled times, in your struggles, to help you stay centered, to help you stay consistent, to help you keep challenged in your life. Friends, I'm excited about this series. I don't know if you could tell. I really am. I'm excited about it. And I think that you're gonna come away with it with a new sense of what the book, this letter of Revelation is. And you're gonna want to dig into it. You're gonna want to say, I want to know more. I want to know more. Let's go. You want to grab that chair for me?